William Harrington had everything the world could offer, but nothing left that he could trust. His name alone could make walls open, doors bow, and empires move. He was the kind of man newspapers called untouchable. Yet inside his mansion, he was a prisoner of his own bitterness. Years of betrayal had hardened him. Trusted employees had stolen from him. Family he once loved had sold his secrets for a slice of his fortune. Each betrayal carved a wound that never healed. So, William made a vow. Never again would he trust anyone, rich or poor, blood or stranger. The world saw a billionaire with endless power. But in truth, William Harrington was a lonely old man, sitting on top of mountains of gold, staring down at humanity with nothing but suspicion. And then came Sophia. Sophia was unlike anyone who had ever worked for him. A single mother, barely surviving, yet walking with a dignity money couldn't buy. She scrubbed the marble floors of that cold mansion, polished the glass that separated luxury from reality, and never once complained. Every paycheck was stretched thin, but her pride was unbroken. By her side was Emma, her young daughter. A little girl with eyes that carried more wisdom than most adults William had ever met. Innocent, yet strangely mature, as though the hardships of life had shaped her spirit without breaking it. Together, mother and daughter stepped into the walls of William Harrington's empire. They were poor, yes, but not poor in values. And it was this very thing, their honesty, their dignity, that would soon be tested in the cruelest way. Because William, the man who had lost all faith in humanity, decided he would set a trap. He told himself it was just curiosity, but in truth it was desperation. A part of him wanted to believe there were still people in this world untouched by greed. So one evening after dinner, William leaned back in his leather chair, feigned exhaustion, and whispered, "Perhaps if they can resist temptation while I sleep, maybe humanity isn't lost after all." Stacks of cash, a glittering Rolex, jewels with enough value to rewrite a poor family's destiny, all left within reach. And then, William closed his eyes, but not fully. He pretended to sleep, one eye barely open, waiting, watching, listening. What he saw that night would shake him to his very core. Because when innocence is tested against temptation, the truth revealed is never what you expect. But here's the question. If you were in Emma's shoes, a child standing in front of unimaginable wealth, with no one watching, what would you have done? And before we go deeper into this unforgettable story, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because the twists you're about to witness will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, betrayal, and honesty. Because what William Harrington saw when he opened that one eye will haunt him forever. The Harrington mansion was not built for laughter, nor for the soft footsteps of a child. Its halls were carved in marble, cold and echoing, lined with portraits of stern ancestors glaring down as though guarding centuries of wealth. To Emma, it felt like another world. While her mother, Sophia, scrubbed and polished, the little girl wandered quietly, her small frame swallowed by towering ceilings and endless corridors. Emma's eyes sparkled not with greed, but with curiosity. Every corner she turned revealed treasures she had only ever seen in storybooks. Golden frames, velvet curtains, chandeliers that dripped with crystals like frozen stars. For a child who grew up counting every coin, every loaf of bread, this place was a kingdom from another universe. And then she found it. William's study. The door creaked open, and Emma stepped inside, her little shoes padding against the Persian rug that cost more than her mother would earn in a decade. There, on the heavy oak desk, were the temptations no child, or even adult, was expected to resist. Stacks of crisp $100 bills bound neatly with golden clips. A Rolex glinting beneath the dim lamp, its face shimmering with diamonds. Rings, brooches, and cufflinks. Treasures that could turn a life of poverty into instant luxury. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her tiny hand reached out, hovering just above the jewels. The world seemed to stop. Even the ticking of the grand clock on the wall grew louder, pounding like a heartbeat. Would she take it? This was the moment William Harrington had been waiting for. From his chair in the other room, eyes half closed, he strained to listen, pretending to sleep, but alert, watching. For William, this was not just a test, it was proof. Proof that humanity was rotten to its core, that even a child, innocent and wide-eyed, could not resist the poison of greed. He told himself, "They're all the same. She'll take it. She must take it." But then, the unthinkable happened. Emma's small fingers, instead of snatching the jewels, gently pushed them together. She straightened the bills into neat stacks, arranging them with a care far beyond her years. Then, with a voice soft as a prayer, she whispered words that sliced through the silence like lightning through a storm. "Things that aren't ours don't shine in our hands." The words lingered in the air, heavier than gold, sharper than any blade. William's heart stuttered, his cynical chest tightened, and for the first time in years he didn't know what to think. This child, this little girl who had nothing, chose honesty over fortune. Where every adult in his life had failed him, this child resisted temptation. He closed his eyes fully, pretending to stay asleep, but inside his mind, the fortress of suspicion he had built for decades trembled. Could it be that not everyone was corrupt? That purity, real and untainted, still walked this earth? Emma, unaware of the storm she had unleashed in William's heart, slipped out of the study. Her tiny footsteps faded down the marble hall, leaving the room colder, but leaving William's thoughts burning hotter than fire. And in that moment, William Harrington realized something he had never admitted, not even to himself. The true test had not been for Sophia and Emma. The test was for him. But tell me this, if you were Emma, staring at a fortune that could erase every hardship you and your mother had ever faced, would you have walked away empty-handed? Or would temptation have been too powerful? And before the story deepens into the next twist, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now, because the truth about what William does next will not only shock you, it will change the entire course of his life and theirs. But peace in the Harrington mansion was never meant to last, because where innocence walked with quiet dignity, hatred and envy always lurked in the shadows. And his name was Richard Blackwood. Richard was not just any employee, he was William Harrington's longtime supervisor of staff, the man entrusted with managing the mansion, its schedules, and its workers. In his own eyes, Richard was more than just a supervisor. He was a gatekeeper of status, a self-proclaimed protector of the Harrington estate. But Richard carried something darker within him, an arrogance steeped in bitterness. To him, Sophia was not just a maid, she was an easy target. Poor, single, black. To Richard, she represented everything beneath him, everything he believed did not belong in these hallowed walls of wealth. Every morning, Richard would sneer when Sophia arrived, his voice dripping with disdain. "Late again, Sophia? Do you think this mansion runs on pity?" he'd bark, even when she had arrived before the sun itself. He would glance at Emma with narrowed eyes, muttering under his breath, "Children are a distraction, liability. Nothing good comes from bringing your burdens into another man's house." His words weren't just insults, they were daggers meant to wound Sophia's dignity, to remind her of her place. And William, still nursing his own wounds of betrayal, often stayed silent, listening, observing, unsure of what to believe. Richard's manipulation grew cleverer with each passing day. He whispered poison into William's ears, carefully crafting his web. "Sir, I know what you think you saw with that little girl," he said smoothly. "But don't be fooled. Poor people are masters of appearances. They will wait, smile, pretend to be honest, until the perfect chance comes. And then they strike. It's in their nature. Trust me, I've seen it my whole life." William listened, torn between the memory of Emma's innocent act in the study and Richard's venomous certainty. Could Richard be right? Was Emma's honesty just a performance, a trick to gain his sympathy? The seeds of doubt were planted, and like weeds in a garden, they began to grow. Meanwhile, Sophia's struggles worsened. Richard found every excuse to deduct from her already meager salary. A broken vase that wasn't her fault? Deducted. A misplaced towel he himself had hidden? Deducted. He even threatened her with dismissal, often in front of others, just to see the humiliation spread across her face. One evening, while other staff members chuckled behind Richard's back, he raised his voice loud enough for the mansion's halls to carry. "You think honesty will feed you, Sophia? You think humility will protect your child? This world eats the weak. And right now, you're just meat waiting to be chewed up." Sophia lowered her gaze, swallowing her tears, refusing to give him the satisfaction of breaking her spirit. But Emma? Oh, Emma. She would wrap her little arms around her mother's waist at night, whispering words that carried more wisdom than most grown men ever held. "Bad people shout loud, Mama," she said softly. "But good people, Good people last longer. Her words became Sophia's anchor, a child's simple truth against a man's calculated cruelty. But William was caught in a storm of confusion. He wanted to believe in Sophia and Emma, but Richard's voice echoed constantly in his mind. After all, Richard had been with him for years, loyal, dependable, hadn't he? Could it be that his supervisor saw something he himself was too blind to see? And so, suspicion began to color William's every glance. When Sophia dusted the shelves, he wondered if her hands lingered too long near the gold trinkets. When Emma skipped through the hall, he wondered if her eyes sparkled too brightly at the sight of jewels. The mansion had become a stage. Each step Sophia and Emma took was under William's silent scrutiny, and Richard's shadow loomed over every corner. But here's the question for you. In a world where lies are often louder than truth, who would you believe? Years of loyalty whispering poison in your ear, or the quiet honesty of a child's unshakable heart? And before the tension rises into what comes next, take a moment to subscribe right now. Because trust me, what William does next, under Richard's growing influence, will tear open wounds that may never heal. And yet, it will set the stage for a revelation no one could have predicted. And then came the night when Richard's hatred turned into action. He had mocked, he had humiliated, he had whispered poison into William's mind. But now, Richard was ready to strike with something crueler, something final, a trap that would shatter Sophia's dignity and perhaps end her only means of survival. It began with a Rolex. Not just any watch, but William Harrington's prized possession, an heirloom worth more than Sophia could make in 10 lifetimes. Richard knew exactly how much it meant to his master and exactly what losing it would suggest. With careful precision, Richard slipped into the storage room where Sophia kept her cleaning supplies. He checked to be sure no one was watching. Then, with a devil's smirk, he buried the golden watch deep within her cleaning bucket. Nestled between rags and polish, a perfect crime, a perfect frame. Moments later, his voice boomed through the mansion like a triumphant hunter who had cornered his prey. Security to the storage room now. The guards rushed in, William trailing behind, his cane tapping against the marble floor. Richard's voice thundered with false outrage. "Sir, I warned you. I told you this maid couldn't be trusted. And look with your own eyes." He plunged his hand into Sophia's cleaning supplies and lifted the Rolex into the air like a trophy of vindication. The gold glistened under the chandelier lights. Gasps echoed across the hall. Sophia froze. Her knees buckled beneath her as though the ground had betrayed her. No, please, that's not mine. I would never." Her voice cracked, trembling with fear and disbelief. But Richard did not let her speak. He twisted her words into silence. "You see, sir? I told you. Poor people always wait for their chance, and tonight, she took it." The room was heavy with judgment. The guards stared coldly, already seeing her as guilty. And William, oh William. His eyes locked onto the watch, then to Sophia's shaking hands, and then to Emma. Emma, so small, so fierce, sprang forward, clutching her mother with all her might. Tears poured down her cheeks as she cried out, her voice slicing through the cruelty of the moment. "My mommy never steals. Please believe me." Please. The mansion grew still. Even Richard, in all his arrogance, could not drown out the purity in that child's scream. Sophia broke down completely, collapsing to her knees, her hands shaking, her words desperate. "I swear on my life, I have never touched what isn't mine. Please believe me, sir, please." William's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her, he truly did. But the evidence sat right there, gleaming, undeniable. The watch wasn't missing anymore. It was found in her bucket, and in his mind, Richard's poisonous voice echoed. "They wait, sir. They smile, they pretend, but eventually strike." Yet, William's heart replayed something else. An image burned into his memory. Emma, in his study days earlier, arranging his treasures, whispering words that defied greed. "Things that aren't ours don't shine in our hands." Those words haunted him now. Could a child capable of such wisdom really belong to a thief? Could a mother raising such a daughter really betray him? The mansion became a battlefield, not of fists or swords, but of trust and suspicion, of truth against lies. William's face was a mask of torment. He stood torn between two worlds, the cold weight of evidence and the fragile hope of innocence. The silence was suffocating. Every breath, every heartbeat in that room seemed to wait for his judgment. Would William betray Sophia and her daughter, casting them out as thieves? Or would he trust the whisper of his instincts against the roar of Richard's accusations? And now I ask you, if you were in William's shoes, holding the power to destroy or to save, what would you choose? The proof in your hands or the truth in your heart? Before I reveal the answer, take a moment to subscribe right now, because what comes next is the turning point. The choice that will either damn an innocent family or change William's life forever. The air inside the mansion was suffocating. The golden watch still gleamed in Richard's hand like a dagger of betrayal. Sophia knelt on the floor, trembling, broken, her dignity crushed beneath accusations she didn't deserve. And Emma clung to her, whispering desperate prayers only a child's heart could believe in. Richard's smirk widened. He had done it. His trap was perfect, or so he thought. But what Richard didn't know, what no one knew, was that William Harrington had never trusted the surface of things. Years of wealth, power, and betrayal had taught him one lesson. People's true colors often reveal themselves when they think no one is watching. And so, long before Richard's schemes ever began, William had placed something in the mansion that very few knew existed. Tiny surveillance cameras, tucked into corners, hidden among shadows. Silent observers, patient witnesses. And tonight, they had seen everything. William's hands trembled as he reached for his remote. His face still unreadable, his eyes locked not on Sophia nor Richard, but on the screen that slowly flickered to life. At first, the room was confused. But then, there it was, the footage. Crystal clear. Richard Blackwood creeping into the storage room like a thief in the night, his smug grin stretching wide as he slipped the Rolex into Sophia's cleaning bucket. His voice muttering under his breath, "Let's see how you crawl your way out of this, Maid." The room gasped, guards stiffened, the staff exchanged glances of disbelief, and Sophia, her tears froze midstream as her eyes widened in shock. Emma's little hands clutched her mother tighter, whispering through a shaky smile, "See, Mommy, good lasts longer." Richard's arrogance shattered instantly. His smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of panic. He staggered back as though the truth itself had struck him across the face. This isn't real. He's twisting it. That's not what. But the evidence was undeniable. His voice, his face, his crime, captured forever. And then William Harrington did something no one expected. For hours he had sat in silence, pretending to rest, feigning disinterest. But now, slowly, deliberately, he rose from his chair. No longer the frail, drowsy billionaire. No, he stood tall, his voice like thunder rolling through the marble halls. "Enough, Richard." The words cracked like a whip. Every eye in the mansion turned to him. William pointed at the screen, his fury restrained but powerful. "You dare insult my intelligence? You dare disgrace this house? To think I trusted you? To think I let you poison my home with your lies?" Richard stammered, desperate, flailing for excuses. "Sir, you can't believe what you see. These cameras, they can be edited, tampered with. She must have." But William cut him off with a raised hand. His voice carried the finality of judgment. "No more lies. The truth has already spoken." He turned to his staff, his gaze unyielding. "Effective immediately, Richard Blackwood is dismissed from this house, permanently. Escort him out, and let the world know, William Harrington does not keep snakes under his roof." The guards seized Richard, his protests drowned by the weight of disgrace. His once powerful presence crumbled into pathetic screams as he was dragged out of the mansion, a man stripped of status, exposed for what he truly was, a coward, a deceiver, a fraud. And in the silence that followed, William turned, not to the traitor who had fallen, but to the maid who had stood accused. Sophia still knelt on the floor, her face buried in her hands, unable to believe what had just happened. Her shame lifted, her innocence restored. William's voice softened now. No longer sharp, no longer guarded. "Sophia, you need not bow your head anymore. The truth has been seen, and it belongs to you." Sophia wept, this time with relief. Her dignity, crushed moments ago, now shone brighter than the chandeliers above her. And Emma, sweet, brave Emma, threw her arms around her mother's neck, whispering with a smile that carried the weight of angels, "I told you, Mommy. Bad people shout loud, but good people last longer." The staff lowered their eyes in shame, realizing how quickly they had judged, how swiftly they had doubted. And William? He watched the bond between mother and child with something stirring in his heart, something he hadn't felt in years. Perhaps, just perhaps, the purity of a child and the quiet strength of a mother could teach even the wealthiest man the meaning of truth. So now I ask you, if you were William, having seen loyalty tested and innocence nearly destroyed, what would you do next? Turn away and forget? Or take a step closer to the people who just proved that integrity shines brighter than gold? And before I reveal how William's life changes forever after this night, make sure you subscribe right now, because what comes next is a transformation that no one, not even William himself, saw coming. The mansion, once heavy with suspicion and deceit, now breathed with a new silence, one not of fear, but of relief. Richard was gone, cast out in disgrace, and the weight of his lies had finally lifted. Yet, for William Harrington, something far greater than justice had unfolded that night. For years, this man of unimaginable wealth had lived behind walls of cynicism. He had seen loyalty sold for profit, friendship traded for influence, and promises broken under the weight of greed. Slowly, painfully, he had lost faith in people altogether. To him, trust was nothing more than an illusion, and goodness a rare myth. But then, there was Emma, a little girl with no riches, no power, and no status. Yet she had something that all the wealth in the world could never buy: truth. She clung to her mother, not with calculation, not with fear of losing privilege, but with pure conviction that her mother was good, and that good always lasts longer. William's eyes softened as he watched her, and for the first time in many years, his voice trembled, not with anger, but with humility. He spoke aloud, in front of his staff, his voice carrying both strength and vulnerability. I had forgotten what honesty looked like. I had forgotten what true faith in people felt like. But tonight, a child reminded me. It wasn't money or jewels that tested me. It was a child's honesty. And she passed where so many have failed. The staff stood silent, their heads bowed, as the billionaire who once ruled with iron walls of mistrust now laid bare his heart. He turned to Sophia, still holding Emma close, and said with a quiet smile, "You stood accused, humiliated, and nearly broken. Yet you endured with grace. For that, you deserve far more than my apology. You deserve my trust." And with those words, William made an announcement that no one expected. From that day forward, Sophia would no longer serve as a simple maid. No, she would be promoted to house manager, overseeing the very mansion where she had once been treated as invisible. Her salary restored, her dignity recognized, her future secured. But William's transformation did not stop there. He knelt down before Emma, his eyes level with hers. The great billionaire, once untouchable, unreachable, now looked into the eyes of a child who had given him back his humanity. "Emma," he said gently, "you have given me something no one else could, and in return, I want to give you something too. From today, your education will be my responsibility. You will have a full scholarship, all the way to the highest level you dream of reaching. And more than that," he paused, his voice firm with resolution, "I will set up a trust fund in your name, so that your future will never again be at the mercy of cruelty or poverty." Emma gasped, her little eyes wide, and then threw her arms around her mother, whispering through happy tears, "Mommy, good really does last longer." Sophia wept openly now, gratitude pouring from her heart in a way words could never fully capture. Her years of silent suffering, her dignity trampled by men like Richard, all of it had not been in vain. For in the end, the truth had not only set her free, it had elevated her. And William, the man who once believed trust was dead, now stood reborn, reminded that even in a world filled with greed and cruelty, goodness, simple, unyielding goodness, still existed. Sometimes it didn't come from kings or queens or from those with power or titles. Sometimes it came from a little girl with nothing but honesty in her heart. So let me ask you, if you were in William's position, would you have done the same? Would you place your faith again in people after years of betrayal if a child's honesty proved that goodness still exists? And before we close this chapter, make sure you subscribe right now, because more stories like this, stories of pain, truth, and redemption, are waiting to remind you that even in the darkest times, light always finds a way through. The night had settled, and the storm of lies had passed, but the story was just beginning its echo, not in the mansion's walls, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. Because what happened in that house wasn't just about a billionaire, a maid, and a child. No, it was about something bigger. Something that reaches into each of our lives quietly when we think no one is watching. It was about honesty versus temptation. Think about it. Sophia could have given up long ago, broken under humiliation, bent under injustice. She could have taken shortcuts, stolen, lied, or fought back with bitterness. But she didn't. She held on to her dignity, even when the world tried to strip it away. And Ima, a child, living in poverty, surrounded by wealth she could only dream of. How easy would it have been to slip into resentment, to take what wasn't hers, to believe that the world owed her something? Yet she didn't. She stood tall in her own small way, protecting her mother, clinging to the truth, and reminding the powerful that goodness is still alive. Viewers, let me ask you directly. If you were in Ima's shoes, what would you have done? Would you walk away with your head held high? Or would temptation whisper, "Just take it, no one will know"? That question matters more than we realize, because every day in our lives, the world gives us choices like this. Not always about watches or riches or accusations, but about something even greater. Who we decide to be when no one is watching. Do we take the shortcut? Or do we hold on to honesty? Do we let poverty steal our dignity? Or do we guard it, knowing it's worth more than gold? This story is a reminder that children often see what adults forget. They see the raw truth of the world without excuses, without masks. And sometimes it is the smallest hands that hold the greatest lessons. A billionaire with all his wealth was reminded of humanity by a little girl who had nothing but honesty. A mother, beaten by the weight of humiliation, found strength not in revenge, but in her daughter's faith. And a world that often rewards lies was silenced by the quiet voice of truth. Let that sink in, because maybe, just maybe in your life too, there's an Ima, a child, a friend, a memory, something pure and honest that can remind you the world doesn't need more riches or power or pride. It needs more truth. So here's the final thought I leave you with tonight. Sometimes the smallest hands teach the greatest lessons. And if you believe that honesty is truly priceless, then don't just watch this story. Carry it forward. Subscribe and share this story right now, because the world needs more of us.